On the same day, my nurse whispered, "Don't go home, run." I walked into my living room and overheard my family whispering about a nursing home they planned to lock me in. That was the first climax. The second came only minutes later, when I finally opened the folded note the nurse had slipped into my purse. The words inside nearly stopped my heart. They didn't just warn me, they exposed a secret that would turn my entire world upside down. And the twist? That evening, I realized the people I trusted most weren't planning for my future. They were plotting to erase me from it. Hi, I'm Margaret. Before I take you deeper into this story, let me know in the comments. Where are you watching from? I love seeing all the places my story has reached. And if you enjoy stories like mine, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next twist. That Tuesday had started so ordinarily, I never imagined it would end in fear. The air in Charleston, South Carolina, was already thick with summer humidity when I drove myself to Roper St. Francis Hospital for what should have been a simple checkup. For years, I'd been a creature of habit, library volunteer on Mondays, church at St. Andrew's Episcopal on Sundays, and doctor's visits every few months. It was a routine life, maybe even predictable, but it was mine. When the nurse came in to take my vitals, I noticed something off immediately. Her hands trembled as she tightened the blood pressure cuff, and her eyes never quite met mine. She leaned in as if to adjust the stethoscope and whispered so softly I nearly missed it. "Don't go home. Run." I felt my whole body jolt. "I'm sorry," I whispered back, but her face was already straightened into a mask of professionalism. Before I could press her, she slipped a folded piece of paper into the side pocket of my purse, her fingers quick and deliberate. Then, with a forced smile, she said, "Everything looks fine, Mrs. Hayes. You're in good health?" Good health? Then why did her voice tremble? Why did her eyes hold so much urgency? I left the hospital with my heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. I wanted to unfold that paper right there in the parking lot, but fear kept my hand frozen. Instead, I climbed into a cab, clutching my purse like it held the key to life itself. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked. I hesitated. For 40 years, the answer had always been the same. Ashley River Road, the house my late husband Robert and I had built. My son David lived there now with his wife Vanessa and their daughter Emily. It was supposed to be home. Safe. But suddenly, it didn't feel safe at all. Still, I gave the driver the address. As the cab rolled past rows of Charleston's historic homes and moss-covered oak trees, I kept my hand on my purse, feeling the sharp crease of that folded note pressing against the fabric. By the time the cab turned into the familiar driveway, my pulse was racing. The shutters gleamed white against the brick, the flower beds were neatly trimmed, and the porch swing rocked slightly in the breeze. Everything looked perfect, but I felt a chill. Through the living room window, I saw them, David, Vanessa, and Emily, sitting close together, their voices low and hurried. I stepped inside just as their whispers cut off. "Mom!" David said quickly, standing up. His smile came too fast, too wide. Vanessa's hands slid something, papers, behind her back. Emily looked at me, her face pale, her eyes heavy with something I couldn't name. "Everything all right?" I asked carefully, setting down my bag. David forced a laugh. "Of course." "How was your appointment?" I opened my mouth to answer, but the words caught when I noticed the papers Vanessa tried so hard to hide. My gut twisted. "I'm perfectly healthy," I said slowly. "The doctor said I have plenty of years ahead." And that's when it happened. David's smile faltered. Not for long, just for a flicker, but enough for me to see it. A flash of disappointment. Why would my son look disappointed that I was healthy? The room went silent. Vanessa glanced at him nervously. Emily bit her lip, and looked away. My heart pounded so loud I was sure they could hear it. I forced myself to walk calmly to my room, each step heavier than the last. Once the door closed behind me, I collapsed on the bed, finally reaching into my purse. With trembling hands, I unfolded the nurse's note. The handwriting was rushed, uneven. Mrs. Hayes, your son and daughter-in-law were here yesterday. They asked me to declare you mentally unfit so they could put you in a nursing home. They want access to your assets. Don't go home. Run. I felt the world tilt. My own son. The boy I'd raised. The man I'd sacrificed for. The family I had poured my life into. And in that moment, with the note trembling in my hands, I realized the nurse's whisper hadn't been a mistake. It was a warning. If you were in my place, would you run immediately or stay to find out just how deep your family's betrayal goes? Tell me in the comments. I'm reading all of them. I sat on the edge of my bed for what felt like hours, staring at the nurse's note. The words blurred as hot tears filled my eyes. My chest rose and fell, each breath sharper than the last. It felt like my heart was being torn in two. One half begging me to run, the other refusing to believe my son, my own flesh and blood, could betray me. By the time I tucked the note deep into the pages of my Bible, I knew one thing. I couldn't let them know what I knew. Not yet. I walked back down the hallway, forcing my face into a calm expression. The smell of Vanessa's pot roast drifted from the kitchen. Normally a comfort, but tonight it felt heavy, suffocating. I joined them at the dining table, the same one Robert had built back when we were newlyweds. We'd shared decades of laughter and prayer around this table, but now the air was stiff, like a funeral dinner where no one dared speak too loud. David carved the roast, his movements sharp and impatient. Vanessa set plates in front of us, her smile stretched thin. Emily scrolled on her phone, her face pale in the glow of the screen. "So, Mom," David began, his tone a little too cheerful. "What did the doctor say?" I forced a steady smile. "He said I'm in perfect health. Strong heart, clear mind. Said, I've got plenty of years ahead of me." The silence that followed was louder than any words. Vanessa's fork clinked against her plate. David kept his eyes fixed on the roast, sawing harder than he needed to. Emily finally looked up from her phone, her expression unreadable, and muttered, "That's great, Grandma." Her voice was flat, almost cold. I glanced from one face to the other. Was it my imagination, or were they disappointed? "So," I said softly, breaking the silence, "you all seem quiet tonight? Everything okay?" "Just tired," Vanessa said quickly, a little too quickly. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and avoided my eyes. David nodded. "Yeah, long day." I wanted to scream at them, "Don't lie to me, I know what you're planning." But instead, I sipped my water and forced myself to play along. The nurse's words echoed in my head. "Don't go home. Run." As dinner dragged on, I studied them the way a teacher studies restless children, looking for tells. Vanessa kept glancing at David like she was waiting for a signal. David's smile never reached his eyes. And Emily? Sweet Emily, who once ran into my arms after every softball game. She wouldn't look at me. When the plates were cleared, I noticed Vanessa scoop up the mail from the counter and slip an envelope into her purse. I knew that envelope. It was my bank statement. My pulse quickened. "Vanessa," I said, keeping my tone light. "Was that my statement?" She froze for half a second, then laughed too loudly. "Oh, yes, sorry. I meant to hand it to you earlier. I'll just leave it on the table." She set it down with a clumsy smile. I reached for it, my hand steady even though my insides felt like they were collapsing. After dinner, I excused myself and went upstairs, but I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, listening. At midnight, I heard footsteps, then whispers. I crept to the top of the stairs, holding my breath. From the kitchen below, their voices carried through the still house. "We'll have to find another doctor," Vanessa hissed. "He won't sign the papers." "Then we'll keep looking," David said, his voice low but firm. "We can't give up now. She has too much tied up in this house, in her accounts. We need it." My stomach clenched. "And what if she figures it out?" Vanessa whispered. "She won't," David muttered. "She's too trusting. Besides, Emily will back us up." There was silence for a moment, then Emily's voice, shaky but audible. "I'm tired of pretending." Every day, lying to her face. "Emily," Vanessa snapped, "don't start. This is for all of us. For your future. Do you want to go to college or not?" My heart shattered. My granddaughter, the little girl I had raised on bedtime stories and birthday cakes, now being pushed to betray me. "Mrs. Hayes, your son and daughter-in-law were here yesterday. They asked me to declare you mentally unfit so they could put you in a nursing home. They want access to your assets. Don't go home. Run." I felt the world tilt. My own son, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd sacrificed for. The family I had poured my life into. And in that moment, with the note trembling in my hands, I realized the nurse's whisper hadn't been a mistake. It was a warning. If you were in my place, would you run immediately or stay to find out just how deep your family's betrayal goes? Tell me in the comments. I'm reading all of them. I sat on the edge of my bed for what felt like hours, staring at the nurse's note. The words blurred as hot tears filled my eyes. My chest rose and fell, each breath sharper than the last. It felt like my heart was being torn in two. One half begging me to run, the other refusing to believe my son, my own flesh and blood, could betray me. By the time I tucked the note deep into the pages of my Bible, I knew one thing. I couldn't let them know what I knew. Not yet. I walked back down the hallway, forcing my face into a calm expression. The smell of Vanessa's pot roast drifted from the kitchen. Normally a comfort, but tonight it felt heavy, suffocating. I joined them at the dining table, the same one Robert had built back when we were newlyweds. We'd shared decades of laughter and prayer around this table, but now the air was stiff, like a funeral dinner where no one dared speak too loud. David carved the roast, his movements sharp and impatient. Vanessa set plates in front of us, her smile stretched thin. Emily scrolled on her phone, her face pale in the glow of the screen. "So, Mom," David began, his tone a little too cheerful. "What did the doctor say?" I forced a steady smile. "He said I'm in perfect health. Strong heart, clear mind. Said, I've got plenty of years ahead of me." The silence that followed was louder than any words. Vanessa's fork clinked against her plate. David kept his eyes fixed on the roast, sawing harder than he needed to. Emily finally looked up from her phone, her expression unreadable, and muttered, "That's great, Grandma." Her voice was flat, almost cold. I glanced from one face to the other. Was it my imagination, or were they disappointed? "So," I said softly, breaking the silence, "you all seem quiet tonight? Everything okay?" "Just tired," Vanessa said quickly, a little too quickly. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and avoided my eyes. David nodded. "Yeah, long day." I wanted to scream at them, "Don't lie to me, I know what you're planning." But instead, I sipped my water and forced myself to play along. The nurse's words echoed in my head. "Don't go home. Run." As dinner dragged on, I studied them the way a teacher studies restless children, looking for tells. Vanessa kept glancing at David like she was waiting for a signal. David's smile never reached his eyes. And Emily? Sweet Emily, who once ran into my arms after every softball game. She wouldn't look at me. When the plates were cleared, I noticed Vanessa scoop up the mail from the counter and slip an envelope into her purse. I knew that envelope. It was my bank statement. My pulse quickened. "Vanessa," I said, keeping my tone light. "Was that my statement?" She froze for half a second, then laughed too loudly. "Oh, yes, sorry. I meant to hand it to you earlier. I'll just leave it on the table." She set it down with a clumsy smile. I reached for it, my hand steady even though my insides felt like they were collapsing. After dinner, I excused myself and went upstairs, but I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, listening. At midnight, I heard footsteps, then whispers. I crept to the top of the stairs, holding my breath. From the kitchen below, their voices carried through the still house. "We'll have to find another doctor," Vanessa hissed. "He won't sign the papers." "Then we'll keep looking," David said, his voice low but firm. "We can't give up now. She has too much tied up in this house, in her accounts. We need it." My stomach clenched. "And what if she figures it out?" Vanessa whispered. "She won't," David muttered. "She's too trusting. Besides, Emily will back us up." There was silence for a moment, then Emily's voice, shaky but audible. "I'm tired of pretending." Every day, lying to her face. "Emily," Vanessa snapped, "don't start. This is for all of us. For your future. Do you want to go to college or not?" My heart shattered. My granddaughter, the little girl I had raised on bedtime stories and birthday cakes, now being pushed to betray me. The envelope in my hand felt heavier than paper should. My name was scrawled across the front in blocky black ink. Margaret Hayes. No return address. No postage. Someone had placed it there, deliberately. I closed the front door softly behind me and carried the envelope into the kitchen. The house was quiet. Too quiet. David and Vanessa were still asleep upstairs, and Emily's door was shut tight. I pulled the blinds down before sitting at the kitchen table, the letter trembling in my hands. For a moment, I considered waiting until morning, until daylight softened the fear pressing against my chest. But my curiosity and dread wouldn't let me. I tore the envelope open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed, not handwritten. "Mrs. Hayes, this is not the first time your family has tried this. 6 months ago, your son attempted to gain access to your accounts using your social security number. He was denied. He is now working with people who are willing to falsify documents. Do not confront them yet. They are desperate. Protect yourself." I froze, the letter shaking in my hands. My breath caught. My son, David, had already tried before? 6 months ago, while I was still buying groceries for the house, paying the power bill, and covering Emily's school fees? He had already started plotting behind my back? A sickening realization sank in. This hadn't been a sudden scheme. It was planned. Patient. Cold. The letter had no signature, but the words chilled me to the bone. Whoever had written this knew things only an insider could know. I thought of Dr. Sterling, my longtime physician. Could he be the one behind this? Or perhaps the nurse? But how would they know about my financial accounts? My stomach churned. Maybe this wasn't a warning at all. Maybe it was bait. I folded the letter quickly and slipped it into the drawer under the sink, tucking it beneath old utility bills. Just as I did, I heard footsteps creak on the stairs. "Mom?" David's voice. I slammed the drawer shut and straightened up, clutching the edge of the counter. "Yes, son." He appeared in the doorway, hair mussed, eyes narrowed slightly. "What are you doing up so early?" "Couldn't sleep," I said, forcing a smile. "Made some tea." He studied me for a moment too long. Then he nodded slowly. "Well, don't tire yourself out. You need your rest." His voice carried a strange weight, as though the words meant more than they seemed. I nodded, keeping my face calm, though inside my heart raced. Did he know? Had he seen me with the envelope? As he shuffled back upstairs, I let out a shaky breath. By morning, the house returned to its usual rhythm, Vanessa fussing with breakfast, Emily rushing out the door for school, David reading the newspaper as if everything was normal. But nothing was normal. Every glance felt loaded. Every silence felt like a trap. I excused myself to the library that afternoon, claiming I wanted to check out some books. In truth, I needed answers. At the Charleston County Public Library, where I had worked for 30 years, I knew the staff well enough that no one asked questions. I slipped into a computer booth and searched quietly for cases of elder fraud in South Carolina. Page after page filled the screen. Stories of parents swindled by their own children, bank accounts drained, homes signed away under false pretenses. Each headline was like a dagger. Daughter steals mother's savings. Son declared parent incompetent for inheritance. It wasn't just happening to me, it was happening everywhere. But then, one article caught my attention. A recent federal investigation into forged medical records. The name mentioned? Paul Hayes, a known forger in the Charleston area. My blood ran cold. Hayes. The same last name as mine. Was it a coincidence or a cruel twist of fate? The article explained how he created fake medical evaluations, wills, and power of attorney documents, exactly the kind of paperwork David and Vanessa had whispered about. The letter in my mailbox suddenly made sense. Someone out there knew they were working with dangerous people, and that meant my family wasn't just scheming. They were involving criminals. That night, I sat in my room staring out at the street, waiting to see if another letter would appear. But the street stayed empty. No mysterious figure, no black SUV, only the weight of the secret burning in my chest. I reached into my Bible for the nurse's note, then into the drawer for the anonymous letter. I set them side by side. 2 warnings, 2 pieces of evidence, but not enough. I knew then I needed proof, real proof. Proof no one could deny. So, I slipped my phone out of its charger and opened the voice recorder. From now on, every word, every whisper, every plan spoken in this house, I would capture it. If they wanted to erase me, I would turn their own voices into my shield. Would you start recording everything like I did? Or would you run from that house immediately? Comment below and tell me your choice. That night, the house was silent except for the distant hum of cicadas outside the window. I sat in bed, clutching my phone like a lifeline, the recorder app glowing on the screen. My heart thumped so loudly, I worried it would give me away. If the letter in the mailbox had taught me anything, it was that my family's scheme wasn't a passing thought. It was active, alive, dangerous. And now, I needed proof, not just for myself, but for the law, for anyone who might doubt me later. I slipped out of bed and padded barefoot down the hallway, careful not to let the floorboards creak. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I heard it, voices. Low, urgent, coming from the kitchen. I set my phone on the edge of the hallway table, screen down, recorder running. Then I crouched behind the banister, hidden in shadow. "We need to push harder," Vanessa's voice hissed. "Relax," David muttered. "We'll find another doctor. Someone will sign the forms my breath caught." "What if she catches on?" Vanessa pressed. "She's been asking questions. She saw the bank statement the other night. She won't put the pieces together," David replied firmly. "Mom's too trusting. She thinks we're still the family she sacrificed everything for." His words stabbed me like a knife. There was a pause, then Emily's voice, soft, reluctant. "I don't like this. Grandma's not crazy. She's sharp. You should have heard her at dinner. She noticed everything. She'll get over it, Vanessa snapped. Emily, you need to stop worrying. College isn't free. Do you want to get into the University of Georgia next year or not? You think scholarships are going to cover it all? Emily's voice wavered. I just feel guilty. You'll feel a lot guiltier if we lose the house and the money, Vanessa cut in. Now stop acting like a child. I pressed a hand to my chest, holding in the gasp clawing at my throat. My granddaughter's college dreams, my son's debts, it all added up. They weren't just scheming. They were rationalizing it, convincing themselves that I was nothing more than a burden standing in the way of their goals. David's voice lowered, harder now. We'll get the papers signed, one way or another. If she resists, we make life harder. We stop cooking for her, stop helping around the house. We let her slip. By the end of the month, no doctor will question the diagnosis. Vanessa laughed softly. And by Christmas, we'll have everything tied up in a neat bow. My stomach churned. Christmas, the holiday Robert had loved most. A season of joy and togetherness, now reduced to a deadline for my betrayal. The conversation ended with the scrape of chairs and the sound of footsteps. I darted back upstairs, sliding into bed just as their shadows passed the hallway. My phone remained downstairs, recording. When the house finally stilled, I crept back down and retrieved it. The screen showed nearly 20 minutes of audio. Proof. Solid proof. I listened to the playback with my headphones buried deep in my blanket, each word slicing deeper into my chest. The certainty was unbearable now. They didn't just want control. They were plotting to strip away my freedom, my dignity, my very identity. I thought back to the sacrifices I'd made, how I skipped vacations to pay for David's braces, how Robert and I sold our car so he could attend that summer science camp in Atlanta, how I gave Emily my mother's pearl necklace for her 16th birthday, hoping she'd treasure it forever. Had all those sacrifices only raised a family that saw me as nothing more than a checkbook? Tears blurred my vision, but beneath them, something stronger stirred. Anger. Not wild, reckless anger, but a cold, steady determination. The nurse's note had told me to run. The letter in the mailbox had warned me of desperation. But now I had proof. Proof that my family's love was an illusion. And proof that I wasn't powerless. As dawn broke, casting thin light across Charleston's quiet streets, I packed a small notebook into my purse. The same notebook Robert once used for household budgets. Now, it would be my ledger of war. I would write down everything I heard, every lie they told, every scheme they whispered. They thought they were cornering me, but they had no idea I was already building my case. Then, just as I tucked the recorder away, my phone buzzed. A text. From an unknown number. I know what they're planning. Meet me at Waterfront Park at noon. Don't tell anyone. If you received a text like this, would you risk meeting the stranger, or would you ignore it and stay hidden? Tell me in the comments. I want to see what you'd do. By noon, the Charleston sun blazed high, reflecting off the Cooper River as I walked slowly toward Waterfront Park. The text still burned in my mind. I know what they're planning. Meet me at noon. Don't tell anyone. Every step felt heavier than the last. My purse strap dug into my shoulder, my phone and notebook hidden inside like fragile weapons. I scanned the familiar sights, the pineapple fountain splashing, tourists taking photos, families walking hand in hand. To anyone else, this was just another peaceful day in Charleston. But for me, it felt like the calm before a storm. I chose a bench near the water, my eyes darting across the crowd. Who had sent the message, and why risk meeting me in public? Mrs. Hayes? I turned sharply. A man in his late 50s approached, wearing a navy blazer despite the heat. His salt and pepper hair was neatly combed, and a leather briefcase swung at his side. Who are you? I asked, my voice trembling despite my attempt to sound firm. He sat on the far end of the bench, keeping a respectful distance. My name is Graham Montgomery. I'm an attorney. My heart skipped. Attorney? Why are you contacting me? He lowered his voice. Because I know what your son and daughter-in-law are doing. And if you don't protect yourself soon, you could lose everything. I stared, stunned. How do you know? He opened his briefcase and slid a thin folder toward me. Inside were photocopies of documents, applications for credit cards, loan requests, even a draft of what looked like a medical affidavit declaring me mentally incompetent. All with my name on them, all forged. My breath caught in my throat. I've been tracking a ring of cases like yours, Graham explained. Families trying to strip elderly parents of their rights. Your daughter-in-law, Vanessa, has been bold. She's already used your social security number to apply for multiple lines of credit. One was flagged by the bank, which is how it crossed my desk. I clutched the folder, my knuckles white. So, it's true? Everything. He nodded grimly. And worse, they've contacted a man named Paul Hayes. The name sent a chill down my spine. I remembered the article from the library. He forges medical documents and wills? If they get his cooperation, they can make it look airtight. You'll lose your home, your accounts, even your reputation. My throat went dry. Why are you telling me this? Why me? Graham leaned closer. Because you're not the first. And most of the time, by the time people come to me, it's already too late. You have one advantage. You know what they're planning. You can fight back. I wanted to believe him, but suspicion gnawed at me. And how do I know I can trust you? He gave a faint smile. You don't. Not yet. But if you keep ignoring this, they'll have you in a nursing home before the year ends. My stomach turned. He was right about one thing. I couldn't ignore it. Start small, he said, standing to leave. Keep recording. Gather everything. Don't confront them until you're ready. When you have enough proof, come to my office on Meeting Street. We'll take it from there. He slipped me his business card and walked away, blending into the crowd of tourists like nothing had happened. I stared down at the card in my trembling hands. Graham Montgomery, attorney at law. I didn't know whether he was my salvation or another trap. But then my phone buzzed again. Another text. This one wasn't from the unknown number. It was from David. Mom, where are you? We need to talk tonight. Don't be late. My pulse quickened. Had he found out I left the house? Did he know I'd met someone? The words replayed in my head. We need to talk tonight. It didn't sound like a request. It sounded like an order. If you were Margaret, would you trust the lawyer and start building a case? Or would you fear it's just another trap? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. When I walked back into the house that evening, the atmosphere felt different. Heavier, as if the walls themselves knew what was about to unfold. The smell of dinner lingered in the air, but the table was empty, the plates still stacked. David sat in the living room armchair, shoulders stiff, hands clasped tightly together. Vanessa perched on the couch beside him, her lips pressed into a thin line. Emily wasn't there. Mom, David said, his voice too calm, too measured. We need to talk. I forced a smile, hiding the phone in my cardigan pocket. The recorder app was already running. Of course. What's on your mind? He exchanged a glance with Vanessa, who folded her arms. We're worried about you, he began. Worried? I repeated softly, sitting on the edge of the sofa across from them. Yes, Vanessa cut in quickly. You've been forgetful. You leave the stove on. You lose track of your bills. It's not safe for you to keep living like this. My jaw tightened. Lies. All lies. I paid the bills. I cooked the meals. They were the ones hiding bank statements and whispering about doctors in the dead of night. But I kept my face calm. I appreciate your concern, I said carefully. But I assure you, I'm fine. David leaned forward, his eyes sharp now. Mom, denial doesn't help. We've already spoken to a specialist about care options. A chill ran down my spine. They weren't just testing the waters anymore. They were moving ahead. Vanessa placed a hand on David's arm, her tone dripping with false sympathy. We're only thinking of your safety. There's a wonderful facility just outside Mount Pleasant. You'd be with people your age, with nurses to look after you. Doesn't that sound nice? My heart pounded. A nursing home, the very trap the nurse had warned me about. I let my gaze drop, playing the part of the frail old woman. Inside, though, I was screaming. My phone recorded every word. You're making decisions without me, I whispered, letting my voice tremble. Why? David sighed, as though he were the patient father and I, the reckless child. Because you can't see it, Mom. You're not the same anymore. We're just trying to help. That word nearly made me laugh. I thought of Graham Montgomery's folder, the forged papers, the credit card applications. Help was the last thing they were offering. I shifted in my seat, watching them carefully. And Emily? I asked softly. Does she agree with this plan? For the first time, their facade cracked. Vanessa's jaw tightened. David's eyes flickered. She's a child, Vanessa snapped. She doesn't get a say in adult decisions. My heart broke a little more. Emily, pulled into this web, pressured to betray me, had tried to protest, and they had silenced her. I looked at my son, the boy I had raised, and saw a stranger. What if I refuse? I asked. The silence stretched. Then David leaned back slowly, his smile thin and cold. Then we'll do what we have to, Mom. We can't sit by while you endanger yourself. If you won't listen, we'll make sure someone does. My blood ran cold. Vanessa nodded. We'll find another doctor. Someone who sees the truth, and if we have to file for guardianship, we will. Guardianship. The word echoed like a death sentence. I swallowed hard, forcing my hands to stay still in my lap. They didn't know I had the nurse's note. They didn't know about the anonymous letter, and they didn't know every word they spoke tonight was being recorded. But I couldn't let them see my fear. I need some time to think, I said softly, rising from the sofa. David stood quickly, his tone firm. Don't take too long. This isn't optional, Mom. We love you, but this is happening, love. They twisted the word until it was unrecognizable. I nodded faintly and walked slowly toward the stairs, my knees trembling. When I reached my room, I closed the door and locked it, pressing my back against the wood. My phone still recorded in my pocket, capturing the muffled sound of their voices downstairs. I pulled it out and hit stop, saving the file with shaking hands. Proof. Solid proof. But as I slid the phone under my pillow, my screen lit up with a new text. From Graham Montgomery. Do not sign anything they put in front of you. Call me tomorrow. Urgent. If your family tried to force you into a nursing home against your will, would you fight them in court, or would you run to protect yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading all of them. The next morning, the smell of coffee drifted upstairs. Normally, it was comforting, the small, steady ritual of family life. But today, it felt like bait. When I came down to the kitchen, David was already seated at the table, a neat stack of papers in front of him. Vanessa stood by the counter, pouring 2 mugs of coffee. Her eyes flicked up at me, her smile too sweet, too rehearsed. Morning, Mom, David said. His voice was light, casual, but I could see the tension in the way he tapped his fingers against the papers. We need you to look over a few things. I froze in the doorway. My hand went instinctively to the phone hidden in my cardigan pocket, recording already. What kind of things? Just house paperwork, Vanessa said quickly, sliding a mug across the table. Routine stuff. Property taxes, insurance. You know, the boring details. My stomach churned. Routine. That word again, meant to make me lower my guard. I sat down slowly, my fingers brushing the papers. The first page looked like an insurance statement. The second, a property form. But the third, my heart skipped. It was a power of attorney document. I looked up sharply. Why am I listed as the signer on this? David gave a practiced sigh. Because it just makes things easier, Mom. In case something happens, we can handle things for you. It's just a precaution. Another word meant to sound safe when it was anything but. I leaned back in my chair, my face calm, though my pulse hammered. And if I don't sign? David's jaw tightened. Then we'll waste time on things that don't need to be complicated. Come on, Mom. Don't you trust us? The question hit me like a slap. Trust. The very thing they had shattered. Vanessa leaned in, her voice dripping with false sympathy. You've worked so hard, Margaret. Let us carry the burden now. You deserve rest. I glanced at her, forcing a small smile. Rest is nice, I murmured, stalling for time. I flipped through the pages again, pretending to study them. Every instinct screamed at me not to sign. Graham Montgomery's warning text replayed in my mind. Do not sign anything. I let the silence stretch, watching their impatience grow. David finally pushed the pen toward me. Just sign at the bottom, Mom. It'll only take a second. I picked up the pen, twirling it slowly between my fingers. My voice stayed steady, though my insides twisted. You know, I'd like to have my lawyer look at these first. The words froze the room. David's eyes narrowed. Lawyer? Since when do you have a lawyer? I smiled faintly. Everyone should have someone to look out for them, don't you think? Vanessa's face paled. Margaret, you don't need a lawyer. We're your family. I slid the papers back across the table. Then you won't mind if I take my time? Family never rushes. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. David's jaw worked as if he were grinding back words he wanted to say. Finally, he stood abruptly, gathering the papers into a folder. Fine, he muttered, but don't wait too long. These things have deadlines, I nodded calmly, though my palms were damp with sweat. I'll keep that in mind. They left the kitchen together, whispering under their breath. I let out a shaky exhale once they were gone, clutching the phone in my pocket. When I played back the recording later in my room, the sound of David's voice echoed sharp and cold. Don't you trust us? It wasn't just a question. It was a threat, hidden under the disguise of concern. I saved the file and tucked the phone beneath my pillow again. Proof was stacking up, but so was the danger. That night, as I tried to steady my nerves, a new message buzzed on my phone. This one wasn't from Graham. It was from an unknown number again. They won't wait much longer. Midnight. Check the basement. Would you dare go into that basement after receiving a message like this? Or would you ignore it completely? Let me know in the comments. The text glowed on my phone screen like a warning flare. They won't wait much longer. Midnight. Check the basement. I sat frozen on the edge of my bed, the minutes ticking by slower than ever. My basement had always been Robert's domain, where he kept old tax files, tools, and the heavy fireproof safe he insisted on buying after Hurricane Hugo. Since his passing, I rarely went down there. Vanessa and David had taken it over for storage. Now, fear prickled my skin. What could possibly be waiting for me down there? At 11:50, I slipped on my slippers, tucked my phone into my pocket, and crept into the hallway. The house was dark and silent, save for the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs. David and Vanessa's door was closed, but I couldn't shake the fear they might wake. At 11:58, I opened the door to the basement. The air rushed up, cool and musty. I flicked on the light, the single bulb casting weak shadows across cardboard boxes and old furniture. My heart pounded as I descended the creaking wooden steps. The message hadn't said what to check, only the basement. I scanned the boxes stacked high, many labeled in Vanessa's neat handwriting. Winter clothes, Christmas, books. I pulled one open. Inside were my old bank statements bundled together. Every one of them had been opened. I tore into another box. This one held unopened letters addressed to me, insurance notices, credit card applications, even one from Social Security. Vanessa had been intercepting my mail. My breath caught. I moved toward the back of the basement where Robert's fireproof safe sat under an old tarp. My stomach knotted. The safe was open. Inside, where there should have been Robert's documents, the deed to the house, and the savings bonds we'd saved for decades, was nothing. Empty. A sharp cry escaped my throat before I clamped my hand over my mouth. And then, I noticed something on top of the safe, a small manila folder. I flipped it open with trembling hands. Inside were photocopies of forged documents. One declaring me mentally incompetent, another showing a power of attorney with David's name scrawled across it, and even a draft of a will leaving everything to him and Vanessa. My knees nearly buckled. I stumbled backward, my pulse hammering in my ears. It wasn't just talk. They weren't just planning. They had already started. Just as I clutched the folder to my chest, a floorboard creaked above me. I froze, holding my breath. Footsteps. Heavy, slow. Then David's voice, muffled through the floorboards. "Mom? What are you doing down there?" My heart slammed. He was awake. I shoved the folder into my cardigan, switched off the basement light, and pressed myself into the shadows. His footsteps grew closer to the top of the stairs. "Mom!" His voice was sharper now, suspicious. The first step creaked under his weight. I backed further into the darkness, clutching my phone, praying the recording would capture everything if he came closer. The second step groaned, then silence. After a long pause, his footsteps retreated. The door above shut with a dull thud. I collapsed against the wall, shaking uncontrollably. I had the evidence in my hands now, proof of their betrayal. But the danger had never been greater. Whoever had sent me that midnight text had been right. They wouldn't wait much longer. And now, they knew something was off. If you found proof like this against your own family, would you run to the police immediately or keep it hidden to gather more evidence? Tell me in the comments. I want to see what you'd do. The morning after the basement, I sat at the kitchen table with trembling hands wrapped around a cup of tea. I hadn't slept. Every creak of the house had jolted me awake, afraid David or Vanessa would burst into my room and drag the truth from me. When they came downstairs, their faces were too composed, their movements too deliberate. They were hiding something, and I was sure they knew I was too. "Good morning, Mom," David said. His voice was smooth, too smooth. Vanessa leaned against the counter, flipping through a folder I recognized immediately, the same one I had seen on the basement safe. My stomach clenched. Did they know I'd been down there? "We need to have another talk," David continued. He sat across from me, folding his hands on the table. "Things can't keep going the way they are." I forced my face to stay calm. "And what way is that?" Vanessa slid a paper across the table. This time, It wasn't hidden in a stack. It was front and center. Power of attorney. My name in bold. David's name as the beneficiary. "Mom, this is just common sense," David said, his voice taking on that rehearsed patience again. "You're getting older. Bills, taxes, healthcare. It's too much for one person. Let me handle it." I looked at the paper, then at his face. My son. The boy who once clung to my hand on his first day of school. The boy I stayed up all night rocking when he had the flu. Now staring at me like a predator waiting for prey. "I'd like more time," I said softly. Vanessa's smile was tight. "Time is running out, Margaret. Things are piling up. The longer you wait, the more complicated this gets." My phone, hidden in my pocket, recorded every word. David leaned closer. "Mom, listen to me. You think you're strong, but you're not. You can't keep living like this. You'll make a mistake, and when you do, the state will get involved. Is that what you want? Some stranger making decisions for you instead of your own son?" His words pressed down on me like a weight. They weren't asking anymore. They were cornering me. I swallowed hard. "I've managed just fine on my own." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "That's not what your doctor said." My pulse spiked. "What do you mean?" David gave a small, calculated smile. "We've spoken to another physician. He agrees you're showing early signs of memory decline. One signature from him, and the court will take our side." The room tilted. So it was already happening. Another doctor. Another step in their plan. I clutched my cup tighter, praying my trembling hands didn't give me away. "Mom," David said firmly, "if you sign now, we can keep this in the family. If you don't." He let the words hang in the air, heavy with threat. Vanessa finished it for him. "Then the courts will decide. And trust me, that will be much harder for you." I forced myself to meet their eyes, steady despite the storm inside. "I need to pray about this," I whispered. "I'll let you know my decision soon." They exchanged a glance, one that told me they weren't convinced. David gathered the papers back into the folder and stood. "Don't wait too long, Mom. We don't want to do this the hard way." They left me alone at the table, the echo of their footsteps fading into the hallway. As soon as they were gone, I pulled out my phone and saved the recording. Another piece of proof. Another nail in their scheme. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. They were moving faster now. If they already had a doctor willing to sign papers, time wasn't on my side. Just then, my phone buzzed. Another text, this time from Graham Montgomery. "They've filed something in court. Call me immediately. We don't have much time." If your family had already taken legal steps against you, would you confront them face to face or head straight to a lawyer? Share your thoughts in the comments. The morning light filtered weakly through the curtains as I sat clutching my phone, Graham's message replaying in my mind. They filed something in court. Call me immediately. My hands trembled as I dialed his number. He picked up on the first ring. "Mrs. Hayes." His voice was urgent, no trace of yesterday's calm. "I've obtained a copy of the petition David and Vanessa filed. You need to see it." Within the hour, I was in his downtown office on Meeting Street, my heart pounding against my ribs. The walls were lined with shelves of thick legal books, but my eyes couldn't focus on any of it. Graham slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a stack of papers stamped with the official seal of the Charleston County Probate Court. In the matter of Margaret Hayes. The words blurred as I forced myself to read. David and Vanessa had petitioned for guardianship, claiming I was no longer capable of managing my affairs. They had sworn under oath that I was forgetful, confused, prone to mood swings, and unsafe to live alone. My chest tightened. Lies. All lies. I flipped to the supporting affidavit. My heart sank. A physician's statement, signed and dated. A name I didn't recognize. Dr. Leonard Harwood. It claimed I showed early signs of dementia. My voice cracked. I've never even met this man. Graham's expression was grim. That's because you didn't. They paid him. Or pressured him. Either way, this affidavit is fraudulent, but unless we can prove it, the court may take their word over yours. I pressed a shaking hand to my forehead. They're my family. My own son. The weight of the betrayal pressed harder than any legal paper ever could. It wasn't just the lies. It was how easy they made them sound believable. They're asking the court to place you in a care facility within 60 days, Graham continued, and to grant David full control of your estate. I felt my throat close. 60 days. In just 2 months, I could lose everything. My home, my freedom, even my identity. Tears filled my eyes, but I blinked them back. I wouldn't let them see me broken. Not David, not Vanessa, not anyone. What can we do? I whispered. Graham leaned forward. We fight, but we'll need evidence, solid evidence that proves their fraud and shows you're competent. The recordings you've been making, the letters, the forged documents you found in the basement, they're critical. I nodded slowly, clutching the folder tighter. My proof was thin, but it was something. And one more thing, he added carefully. Emily, if she can testify on your behalf, it could make all the difference. The court will listen to her, Emily, my granddaughter. My heart ached at the thought of her caught in the middle. She was being manipulated by her parents, but I had heard the hesitation in her voice. Deep down, she knew this was wrong. Could I ask her to choose between me and them? Graham must have seen the turmoil in my face. I know it's a lot to ask, but if she speaks the truth, it could save you. I nodded faintly, my mind swirling. Leaving the office, I clutched the papers to my chest. The streets of Charleston bustled with tourists and workers, but I felt like I was moving through water. Every step was heavy, every breath a battle. Back at the house, I slipped the papers into my Bible, hiding them where I had hidden the nurse's note. My sanctuary now carried all my secrets. That evening, Emily knocked softly on my bedroom door. Her face was pale, her eyes red as if she'd been crying. "Grandma," she whispered, glancing nervously down the hall before stepping inside. "We need to talk. If you were Margaret, would you trust your granddaughter to tell the truth, or would you fear she's just another part of the trap? Comment your thoughts below." Emily shut the door behind her, her hands twisting nervously at her sides. She looked so young in that moment, just 16, caught between loyalty to her parents and the love she had always shared with me. "Grandma," she whispered, I don't know what to do." I motioned for her to sit beside me on the bed. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Mom and Dad, they think you're weak. They say you'll never fight back. They told me not to believe you if you tried to say anything against them." Tears welled in her eyes. "But Grandma, I heard them talking about the lawyer, about the papers, about putting you away." My breath caught. "And what do you believe, Emily?" She stared at me, eyes searching. "I believe you. I believe you're not crazy. You've always been the strongest person I know." A sob escaped my chest, half relief, half heartbreak. I took her hands in mine, squeezing them tight. "Then you have to help me," I whispered, "because they've already filed the papers. In 60 days, I could lose everything. But if you speak the truth, the court will listen. Emily nodded, but her face crumpled. They'll hate me, Grandma. They'll never forgive me if I testify I brushed a strand of hair from her face. Emily, sometimes doing the right thing means losing the wrong people. Family isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who stands with you when everything falls apart. Her shoulders shook as she buried her face against me. For the first time in weeks, I felt her embrace not as my granddaughter torn between sides, but as my ally. 2 weeks later, the hearing began at the Charleston County Probate Court. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors, reporters, even strangers who had heard whispers about the case. David and Vanessa sat at the petitioner's table, looking polished and confident, as if they were about to win a prize they'd been waiting for all their lives. I sat across from them, my lawyer Graham by my side, Emily just behind me, her hand clutching mine. The judge called the case. David spoke first, his voice dripping with rehearsed concern. Your Honor, my mother is no longer capable of managing her affairs. She forgets things. She repeats herself. She's unsafe to live alone. We only want what's best for her lies. Every word a dagger. Then it was my turn. Graham presented the forged documents, the inconsistencies, the recordings. And finally, Emily was called to the stand. The courtroom held its breath as she walked forward. My heart hammered in my chest. She took the oath, her small voice steady. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The lawyer for David and Vanessa leaned in, smug. Emily, isn't it true that your grandmother often forgets things? That she confuses details? Emily looked directly at him, then at her parents. No, that's not true. My grandma is sharp. She remembers everything. The ones who lie are my parents. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. David's face turned pale. Vanessa's lips pressed into a thin line. Emily continued, her voice breaking. I heard them planning to take her money. I heard them say they'd switch her medication to make her seem unstable. I didn't want to believe it, but I can't lie anymore. They're not protecting her. They're trying to destroy her. Tears blurred my vision. My brave granddaughter standing in the light of truth. The judge's expression hardened. This court will not tolerate such deceit. Petition denied. Guardianship dismissed. In that moment, the weight that had crushed me for weeks lifted. David and Vanessa sat frozen, their plan shattered. The courtroom erupted in whispers, but all I heard was Emily's voice as she returned to me, whispering fiercely, We won, Grandma! We won that night, back at my home in Charleston. Emily and I sat on the porch as the sun set over the harbor. The air was heavy with magnolia and salt. Grandma, she said softly, do you think I'm a bad daughter for testifying? I shook my head, tears in my eyes. No, Emily. You're a good person. You chose truth over lies. That makes you stronger than both of them combined. She leaned against me, and for the first time in months, I felt safe. Not because the danger was gone, but because I was no longer standing alone. If this story touched you, tell me in the comments. Do you believe blood always makes someone family? Or is loyalty what truly counts? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Every story we tell together helps protect someone else from betrayal.